propelled device can instead be constructed from same massive fissile material. Weapons on the low end of the scale have yields that overlap with large conventional weapons and are therefore often viewed as blurring the distinction between conventional and nuclear weapons, making the prospect of using them easier in a conflict. 201 Alleged Soviet exploitation. In an interview in 2000 with Mikhail Gorbachev, the leader of the Soviet Union from 1985 to 1991, the following statement was posed to him. In the 1980s, you warned about the unprecedented dangers of nuclear weapons and took very daring steps to reverse their arms race, with Gorbachev replying, models made by Russian and American scientists showed that a nuclear war would result in a nuclear winter that would be extremely destructive to all life on Earth. The knowledge of that was a great stimulus to us, to people of honor and morality, to act in that situation. 202. However, a 1984 U.S. Interagency Intelligence Assessment expresses a far more skeptical and cautious approach, stating that hypothesis is not scientifically convincing. The report predicted top Soviet nuclear policy would be to maintain their strategic nuclear posture, such as their fielding of the high throw-weight SS-18 missile, and they would merely attempt to exploit the hypothesis for propaganda purposes, such as directing scrutiny on the use portion of the nuclear arms race. Moreover, it goes on to express belief that if Soviet officials did begin to take nuclear winter seriously, it would probably make them demand exceptionally high standards of scientific proof for the hypothesis, as the implications of it would undermine their military doctrine, a level of scientific proof which perhaps could not be met without field experimentation. 203. The UN redacted portion of the document ends with the suggestion that substantial increases in Soviet civil defense food stockpiles might be an early indicator that nuclear winter was beginning to influence Soviet upper echelon thinking. 189. In 1985, Time magazine noted the suspicions of some Western scientists that the nuclear winter hypothesis was promoted by Moscow to give anti-nuclear groups in the US and Europe some fresh ammunition against America's arms build-up. 204. In 1985, the United States Senate met to discuss the science and politics of nuclear winter. During the congressional hearing, the influential analyst Leon Gu presented evidence that perhaps the Soviet chief simply echoed Western reports rather than producing unique findings. Gu hypothesized that Soviet research and discussions of nuclear war may serve only Soviet political agendas, rather than to reflect actual opinions of Soviet leadership. 205. In 1986, the Defense Nuclear Agency document an update of Soviet research on and exploitation of nuclear winter. 1984-1986 charted the minimal, public domain, research contribution on, and Soviet propaganda usage of the nuclear winter phenomenon. 206. There is some doubt as to when the Soviet Union began modeling fires and the atmospheric effects of nuclear war. Former Soviet intelligence officer Sergei Tretyakov claimed that, under the directions of Yuri Andropov, the KGB invented the concept of nuclear winter in order to stop the deployment of NATO Pershing II missiles. They are said to have distributed to peace groups. The environmental movement health journal Ambio disinformation based on a fake doomsday report by the Soviet Academy of Sciences by Georgy Golitsyn, Nikita Moiseev and Vladimir Alexandrov concerning the climatic effects of nuclear war. 207. Although it is accepted that the Soviet Union exploited the nuclear winter hypothesis for propaganda purposes. 206. Tretyakov's inherent claim that the KGB funneled disinformation to Ambio, the journal in which Paul Crutzen and John Birx published the 1982 paper Twilight at Noon, has not been corroborated as of 2009. 101. In an interview in 2009 conducted by the National Security Archive, Vitaly Nikolaevich Zychitko, a senior analyst at the Soviet Academy of Sciences and military mathematical modeler, stated that Soviet military analysts were discussing the idea of nuclear winter years before U.S. Scientists, although they did not use that exact term. 208. Mitigation techniques. A number of solutions have been proposed to mitigate the potential harm of a nuclear winter if one appears inevitable. The problem has been attacked at both ends. Some solutions focus on preventing the growth of fires and therefore limiting the amount of smoke that reaches the stratosphere in the first place, and others focus on food production with reduced sunlight, with the assumption that the very worst case analysis assaults of the nuclear winter models prove accurate and no other mitigation strategies are fielded. Fire control. In a report from 1967, techniques included various methods of applying liquid nitrogen, dry ice, and water to nuclear-caused fires. 209. The report considered attempting to stop the spread of fires by creating fire breaks by blasting combustible material out of an area, possibly even using nuclear weapons, along with use of preventative hazard reduction burns. According to the report, one of the most promising techniques investigated was initiation of rain from seeding of mass fire thunderheads and other clouds passing over the developing, and then stable, firestorm. Producing food without sunlight. In the book Feeding Everyone No Matter What, under the worst-case scenario predictions of nuclear winter, the authors present various unconventional food possibilities. These include natural gas-digesting bacteria, the most well-known being Methylococcus capsulatus, that is presently used as a feed in fish farming. Winking sad smiley. 210. Bark bread, a long-standing famine food utilizing the edible inner bark of trees and part of Scandinavian history during the Little Ice Age. Increased fungiculture or mushrooms such as the honey fungi that grow directly on moist wood without sunlight. Winking sad smiley. 211, and variations of wood or cellulosic biofuel production, which typically already creates edible sugars /xylitol from inedible cellulose, as an intermediate product before the final step of alcohol generation. 212. 213. One of the book's authors, mechanical engineer David Denkenberger, states that mushrooms could theoretically feed everyone for 3 years. Seaweed, like mushrooms, can also grow in low-light conditions. Dandelions and tree needles could provide vitamin C, and bacteria could provide...
Yes. Let's stop the video. It's 9 p.m. soon. So this little supermarket sells bread and cakes half price after 9 a.m. But that's different every day what they have. So maybe they have nothing. So you can buy a cake like $50. Then I could get more cola. So I will charging the camcorder, then I will bicycle down and shopping. Then I will get back home and try finish this